back, everybody, to Morning Brew. We are serving up some bold conversations to kickstart your week, and this episode is no exception. Today, we're diving into a topic everyone seems to be talking about: longevity. And who better to help us unpack it than the ever so popular, always insightful, and fan favorite guest, Dr. Dagoberto Gonzalez. Well, you know him as one of Laredo's trusted OBGYNs, but today, Dr. Gonzalez is joining us to go beyond the exam room and into the lifestyle choices that are helping people live longer and live better. We're calling this episode Longevity 101. So think weight, healthy foods, and a whole lot of wisdom. Dr. Gonzalez breaks it all down in a way that only he can, which is, of course, real, relatable, and backed by science. So whether you're in your 30s looking to build habits that last, or in your 60s just ready to maximize every moment, this is one episode you don't want to miss. So everybody, please help me welcome my good friend, my OBGYN, Dr. Dago Gonzalez.
Hi, Mindy.
Hi there. Thank you so much for joining us. We have been talking about this topic for quite some time because you have a vested interest in it. You're very passionate about it too.
I am. You know, we're going to talk about longevity and what it means. You know, what is longevity, and to kind of discuss some of those things. But the reason that we've been putting this off for so long, Mindy, is that this is a very rapidly evolving subject. This is something that even what I talk about today will be outdated. There's so much movement in this specific realm that it's really exciting. And, you know, we always talk about Laredo not being that progressive and not having, you know, keeping up with the rest of the country, but it is. You know, there are a lot of people that are very well vested in this, and you're going to see some changes here in this Laredo soon.
So let's define longevity for us, Dago. What does that mean?
Well, longevity, I mean, that's a very...
living till 100 years old? Or?
No, longevity is very simple, right? Longevity is when are you born and when do you die. So it's a very easy definable term, right? You're born and then you die and you have your funeral, you're 12 feet down, whatever. That's longevity. Now, the United States has done a great job in people living longer. Believe it or not, there are some experts in the country that say that babies born today are going to live to 120.
What?
120, 130, right? And these experts are so sure that that's going to happen. But there's another word that's much more important than that, and that's called your health span.
Okay.
And that's really what I want to focus on today. I want to talk about health span. And what is health span? Well, health span is, well, how well do you live up until the time that you die?
Okay.
Right? Are you going to be that kind of person that's going to be bedridden in a nursing home the last 10 or 12 years of your life and live a miserable life where people are going to have to be caring for you 24/7? Or are you going to be that really active person that's out hiking and moving and going to exercise and going with your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, going to Disneyland? Which one are you going to be? And obviously, everybody wants to be the latter, but how do you get there? Exactly. And it requires work. It's not easy.
Okay. And work that we need to do now to get us to that point, is that
right?
Okay.
And we can talk for hours regarding this. But you know, we think about, okay, well, what are the things that kill us in today's society? Okay. What is it? Well, we think about cardiovascular disease, #1 killer of most people. Women Wear Red campaign, we're making people aware about cardiovascular disease. That's the #1 killer, cardiovascular disease. #2. Degenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, dementia, where people waste away. Then you have metabolic diseases such as diabetes and other metabolic issues such as insulin resistance, which again, that's a whole other topic, but that's where it increases your risk of the other two that we talked about. And then lastly, people die of cancer. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is, what are techniques out there in this world that help reduce those risks? And what do we need to be doing and focusing on today?
You know, we talked a little bit before we got started that there are health professionals, there are physicians that are actually focused on this particular subject matter. Right. They're going and wanting to do this type of medicine.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, there's no accreditation in this world for longevity. There isn't. Okay. There are people that have a vested interest, whether they're PhDs, they can be researchers, scientists, and physicians. And they have a vested interest in longevity and health span. And they're on podcasts all over, you know, Instagram and Facebook. And there's some really good ones out there. There's about 5 or 6 people that I can name off the top of my head that are worth listening to and following and so forth. But there is a profession called functional medicine.
Okay.
And functional medicine is a type of profession like an OB/GYN or like a family practice doctor, where physicians like us leave our practice and become functional medicine physicians. You get an accreditation through an organization, and what you do is you open up a practice and you only see patients to try to get to the root of their health problems, get down to the basics of it, and start doing little techniques that we're going to talk about today to try to improve and reverse those. And whether it's a holistic approach, whether it's a pharmacologic approach, whether it's a behavioral approach, different types of options to get people better and living longer.
So the word functional, Dago, because we hear functional medicine, functional foods, functional exercise.
Right.
I mean, functional has just become such a trendy word.
Right.
Does that just mean,
Well,
it's functional?
Right. It's a very broad term to say, hey, how well am I going to live and move around? How functional am I going to be in the future? Like if you ask me, how do I approach my health span? I want to know if I can do what I'm doing today the last 10 years of my life.
You want to.
Yeah, and you want to, right.
Yeah.
So if I want to be that functional the last 10 years of my life, what do I have to do now to get there?
Okay. So what do we have to do
right.
now to
Okay.
get there?
So-
Because you've made the argument perfectly. We don't want to be bedridden. We don't want to be in a nursing home. I mean, that's sad,
Yeah.
And that's just not the type of life we all strive for or should strive for.
Right, and patients always ask me, what do you do, Dr. Gonzalez?
Yeah.
What is it that you do that I want to do what you do?
Yeah.
And I say, well, there's 5 things in this world that are going to make you live longer. And it's very simple, and only 5 things. And doing those 5 things may be a little difficult, but there's only 5 things. Now, Mindy and I have not talked about this before, so I'm going to actually quiz her.
Okay.
Just name one thing that's going to make you live longer.
Healthy foods.
Healthy foods, nutrition,
foods.
absolutely. Nutrition is number 1.
Yeah.
And just like functional medicine, there are multiple self-proclaimed experts in nutrition. Everything you read about, it's going to tell you, you eat this, you should do this type of diet, you should do this type of. Everybody's diet has to be tailored for that specific person and what works for you. But it comes down to just eating 3 balanced meals every day, not snacking in between meals, not eating or drinking anything 3 hours before you go to bed. Focus
Processed
on,
food, we hear how
focus
bad
on,
those are.
Right. You're looking at plant-based proteins.
Okay.
You want to limit your amount of red meat. It's just basic stuff that you were taught in elementary school to live longer.
Back to the basics.
Right. And we could talk about nutrition forever, but the purpose of today's talk is to kind of introduce people into this topic and dive deeper and do your own research and learn how to do better. But nutrition is definitely one of them.
Okay, next one absolutely has to be exercise. You got to keep active. Get that heart going.
Exercise, and I get that asked, what kind of exercise should I do, Dr. Gonzalez? Look at me, well, first of all, right, we always want to say, see your primary care provider, make sure you're healthy enough to do exercise. But what type of exercise are we talking about, Benny? People say, should I run every day or should I do something else?
Right. Well, I hear, just going back to the words that are trending, a lot of weight resistance, a lot of combining it with the cardio, but you've got to get those muscles
oh my God,
going.
you hit it right on the nail. It has to be the proper exercise for the age group that you're in.
Okay.
Right? That's important, right? If I tell a 25 or 30-year-old to do the same exercise as a 60-year-old, it doesn't match because their goals are different, right? So now we're talking about longevity. Let's just talk about people over the age of 50. What should you be doing? Well, you have to focus on strength and stability. And the word stability is so important because you don't want to be falling when you're older. And the only thing that's going to make you stronger and help your balance is your strength. So it has to be the proper balance of hard cardio exercise to protect your heart, weights, and what kind of weights, whether it's light weights, a lot of repetition, or heavy weights, low repetition, to improve your muscles and your bones. And then you talk about, zone 2 cardio, which is basically just a fast, brisk walk, not hard walk, a brisk walk where I'm not really sweating that much and I can maintain a conversation. And that's recommended to give you that longevity aspect to protect your heart. So the exercise has to be tailored to the age of the person and the goals of what they're trying to do. And people always ask me, I'm 80 years old, doctor. I can't do anything anymore. I'm beyond that. Absolutely not. There are multiple regimens out there that teach you how to start weight training or exercise training even in your 80s.
Wow.
Absolutely. And those have been shown also to improve longevity.
Okay.
So it's never too late, Mindy.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we've done number 1 and number 2.
Right.
I want to get to the other ones, but we got to take a quick break. We have our sponsors that we need to thank for sponsoring Morning Brew. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to hit number 3, number 4, and number 5 on how we can increase our lifespan and live a longer and happier life. Stay with us.
Why pay a monthly fee? Free checking at IBC.
Welcome back, everybody, to Morning Brew. This episode, we are talking about Longevity 101. We are back with Dr. Dagoberto Gonzalez, someone who is very passionate about hacking how we can live a longer life. So we're continuing with the conversation. Dago, we talked a little bit before the break. We had number 1 and number 2, eating healthy, of course, and exercising. I was about to blank out on number 3, 4, and 5 because I couldn't think of the next ones.
And yes, and most of our patients, when I ask them the same thing, they can hit number 1 and number 2 easy, but the other 3 are actually pretty easy if you think about it. So the next one is sleep. The one that I am most passionate about is actually focusing on sleep. Why? Because it's the easiest one for people to attain. I call it, it's the lowest hanging fruit that we can all grab and we can improve on.
And yet, it's the hardest one for us to do because we're so busy with our lives and we don't ever think 8 hours of sleep, you know.
How many times have I heard, by patients that say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'm alive on this earth right now. You can't live by that mantra anymore because that has been shown, if you live by that mantra, that you're going to be dying earlier. You're going to be shaving years off your life, so you're completely going against what you want to do, what you wanted to achieve in the first place.
Right.
So let's talk about basics of sleep. Basics of sleep. You should sleep for 8 hours. Okay, which is very hard to do. But actually, if you can get 7, that's great. 6 is not acceptable. 7 to 8 hours.
Wow.
The room should be pitch black. There should be no light entering the room. Next.
And no electronics, no TV.
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
The temperature of the room. People are not going to like this, but the temperature of the room that has been shown to improve sleep and for you to sleep better, get more quality sleep, is 67 degrees. Which is 67 degrees, which is really hard in Laredo. Yeah. And me and my wife Patsy, we're slowly ticking away at that number, trying to get as low as we can. And we're actually doing a good job of getting there. Then social media. Social media stimulates the mind so much. That's what it's designed to do. Yeah. So there's no social media 2 to 3 hours before you plan on going to sleep. You should never exercise at least 2 hours or 3 hours before you want to go to bed. And try not to do anything that's going to be overstimulating, right? So if you're watching Netflix and watching, Narcos, you're not going to sleep well that night, I can tell you. Where you can watch something like, I don't know, something a lot more relaxing.
A documentary or something.
Something that just makes you laugh. Though. And you need to avoid caffeine after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So avoiding caffeine is a big deal because that stays in your system quite a bit of time. Yeah. So those are little techniques that you can do to try to improve the sleep. And patients will tell me, look, I am doing all that, doctor. I'm doing it, and I'm still not getting good sleep. And the most important thing that I tell patients regarding sleep, are you tracking your sleep? And people look at me like, what are you talking about? Yeah. What do you mean, what am I tracking? Absolutely. Are you tracking your sleep? How much deep sleep, how much REM sleep are you getting? How much uninterrupted sleep? And patients look at you and they look at me, they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I said, that's where you have to go a little deeper, right? I mean, when I say tracking sleep, there's so many ways to track your sleep now. The beds do it for you. Your Apple Watch does it for you. I choose the Oura Ring. People use a bracelet called a Whoop Ring. Everything, they all do it, and some are better than others. But every morning, the first thing I do when I wake up, I look at that number and I want to know what percentage of deep sleep did I get? What percentage of REM sleep did I get? And how much restorative sleep did I get, et cetera. Now you may say, the common person may say, well, I don't understand that. But when you get that device, you learn about that. And it teaches you what deep sleep does, right? Deep sleep, like for example, we're supposed to get 12 to 15% of our night in deep sleep. Well, deep sleep is what we call your restorative sleep. That's where your body restores itself, cleans itself of all the dead cells that you've accumulated throughout the day, and it allows you to function more effectively the next day. That's your deep sleep.
Okay.
Your REM sleep, that's when you're dreaming, where people say, oh, I can see your eyeballs through your eyelid. That's when that's where your creativity comes from, and how you're going to perform the next day. And then what was your oxygenation when you slept? That's what I tell people. Like, what do you mean? Well, you should be above 98% of percent saturation in your blood. Everybody knows about little percent saturations from COVID. Well, you'll be surprised how many people have sleep apnea and don't know it, and have interrupted sleep all night because they're choking themselves when their throats are collapsing.
Wow.
Those are the kinds of things. And people say, yeah, doctor, but I go to bed at 10 and I wake up at 7, so I slept 8 hours. Really? Why don't you monitor your sleep? You'll be surprised. Really, you only slept about 6.5 hours. The other time you were tossing and turning and you were choking. And you become educated on the type of sleep that you are actually undergoing. And then you can start doing little techniques, which we're going to talk about biohacking, little techniques that are going to improve your deep sleep, your REM sleep, your restorative sleep, etc.
Wow.
Yes, and it's huge. And I focus, I know people make fun of me all the time, well, you're in bed by 9:30. Well, it's okay. I wake up at 5 in the morning, so it's okay to go to bed at 9:30, but I'm doing that to help me live longer. And, being a medical profession, we got to be at the top of our game 24/7. I can't be sluggish. A patient asks me every morning, before I do surgery, hey, how many hours did you sleep last night? And I look at them and say, well, probably 3. You think they're going to let me operate on them? I don't think so. But that's just, just one part,
What you're telling me right now about the different types of sleep, this is really mind-blowing, because we truly don't know. I don't know what I sleep. I know that I'm lacking definitely the 7 to 8 hours of sleep. If I get 5, that's a good thing. But because I anchor the morning show, so I have to be in bed quite early, and it's difficult because of the interruptions and all of that. So being able to track, I'm very intrigued by that.
Absolutely. That's the most important thing about sleep. I tell patients, look, you can do all of those things, but if you feel still fatigued during the day, well, there's something you're doing wrong. You got to track your sleep. Luckily for me, I have almost 7 years of data of my sleep, and I can really follow it really well. And I deliver babies in the middle of the night, and that throws me off completely. But, I try to catch up during the day by maybe taking a nap. And taking naps is completely okay. I'm not talking about a 2-hour nap. I'm talking about a 15 to 20-minute power nap. And what it does for somebody's body to push it through the day is amazing.
Okay, so power naps are a good thing.
Power naps are a good thing, absolutely.
Mexico has us on the power naps.
Well, they have a siesta. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about, that's number 3.
That's number 3.
Of course. Okay.
4. Number 4, pharmacological intervention. Okay, what I mean by this is...
That sounds like medications or drugs.
Or supplements.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, patients will tell me, doctor, I am taking this list of supplements. Is this okay? Is this what I should be taking? And I always tell them, well, why? Explain to me why you're taking every single supplement on this list, and I'll tell you if it's important, but you better tell me why you're doing it and what's the importance of you taking it and where you're getting it from. Because where a supplement comes from is really important. So we can talk about supplements also all day long. There's so many supplements out there, but the basic ones, make sure your vitamin D is optimized. Why? It prevents cancer, works in every single cell of the human body. Make sure your vitamin B is optimized, right? B is important for boost, for energy, for focus. Then you start diving into something called peptides, where these are amino acid chains that wellness center cells, such as things that increase your growth hormone throughout the night. Something very popular you're hearing about right now, especially here in Laredo, is NAD. NAD is an IV or a shot that also helps with restoration of the human body to make you feel better and heal you from within and make you live longer. You talk about other biohacking techniques with certain medication, but a lot of research right now, Mindy, is going into medications that we use for other things, such as diabetes, and do they work for longevity? I've had patients starting to come in that tell me, oh, I'm taking metformin, doctor. And I'm like, well, you're not a diabetic. You don't have anything that you need it for. Why? Oh, for anti-aging. Wow, okay, I haven't heard that ever. And now people are talking about metformin. And there is a lot of research on metformin to help you live longer. There's a lot of research on something called rapamycin. Rapamycin is an antibiotic, and that's been shown in mice to make mice live longer. So something coming into the wellness and longevity and health span stage or audience is pharmacologic supplements, and those that are prescribed by physicians.
Okay, so more than what you'll just find when you go to the local store.
Absolutely.
In the little jars.
Right.
Yeah.
And something that goes along with that, as we're learning more about the human DNA and mapping out the genome. Now you're going to have experts that are going to be able to tweak that DNA in your body, and they are approaching longevity and aging like a disease. If you have diabetes, well, we can give you this medication to cure that disease. And that's what they're doing with aging. We're looking at it like a disease, and there's ways to fix it to prevent the problems in your body that are occurring that are making you age.
Wow, that's
fascinating. It's incredibly fascinating. It's going incredibly fast. And these are the experts that are saying that people that are born today are going to live to 120. But the best part about that, Mindy, they're going to feel like they're 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
That's the best part about it.
Because you don't want to be 100 years old and feel like 100 years old.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely right. And like I mentioned
things.
earlier, the United States has done a pretty good job of longevity, but it's done a terrible job of health span. And actually, when we compare our longevity and health span to other developed countries in the world, we're like almost dead last.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. The average age of a person in the United States is the man lives up to 78, a woman up to 82. There are many developed countries in this world that have longer lifespans than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Dago, I know we need to get to number 5,
Right.
but we're going to take another quick break, and we're going to come back. We're going to hit number 5, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about biohacking.
Right.
Exactly. What is biohacking? We're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Dagoberto Gonzalez on Longevity 101. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody, and we are so happy that you have chosen to stick around with us. We are talking to Dr. Dagoberto Gonzalez about such an interesting topic. We're talking about longevity and health span and how modern technology is just helping us learn how we can live better lives, longer, not just longer lives, but better lives. So we're continuing the conversation. Dr. Dagoberto, thank you so much for enlightening us with all of this fascinating science-backed information.
Right.
So we talked about number 1, we'll just do a quick recap, is number
we talked
1.
about nutrition,
Right.
exercise.
Right.
Then we talked about sleep. And we talked about pharmacologic interventions, such as medication or supplements.
Okay.
And the last one is emotional health. Oh my God, here we go. Mental health, right?
That really makes a difference.
Stress. How many people come to our office and requesting a cortisol level? And I'm like, why are you requesting a cortisol? Well, I want to know what my stress level is. Well, that cortisol changes throughout the day depending on what your stress is. So it's not a very accurate assessment of your stress level, but you know if you're stressed. And chronic stress has been shown to increase the 4 things that we talked about that kill you sooner.
Wow.
And if you can concentrate on the 5 things that actually make us live longer, they all interplay with each other to decrease the 4 things that we talked about that kill you.
Right.
Right. And emotional health, that's a big one. I mean, you have to live happy relationships. You have to be, we as humans like to gather and enjoy and converse, especially Hispanics. You have to continue that. I mean, if you want to kill somebody faster, make them a widow or single or not talk to a single human or a hermit, and their lifespan has been shown to be shorter than if you live with someone or have happier relationships.
So mental health. Therapy. There's therapy, there's medications. I mean, how does somebody kind of overcome
mental health, just meeting with or having therapy with people on how to reduce your stress and how to stop and just smell the roses. And in this very fast-paced society that we live in with a cell phone on our hips 24/7, our lives are like that. Yeah. For those that grew up in the 80s, or I always tell everybody else that didn't, we lived in the best decade in the world. I mean, it was so much fun, and we did it all without a cell phone.
We did,
Now,
and look how we came out. We're okay.
We're okay. So emotional health plays a big role, absolutely. And you can't underscore not a single one of those 5 things that I talked about. They're all of equal importance.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've become more, as I've aged, more laid back. I choose my battles.
Right.
I don't let the big things bother me like maybe I used to when I was, 10 years, 20 years ago. It's just things are just,
and
go
that's
with
exactly
the flow.
that's exactly what I'm talking about. And people always tell me, and people listening today may say, wow, that was just too overwhelming. Like, how do I get started? Like, I want to start taking this journey, but how do I start? And I always tell people, start with the easiest one.
Yeah.
Start with the easiest one. Start improving your sleep and monitoring your sleep. That's an easy one to start with. And let's see where you're at. Let's fix that problem. Then, while you're fixing this problem, you're going to have more energy. Why don't we talk about exercise? And let's start incorporating exercise. And then that'll eventually you start feeling better, looking better, then you go to nutrition and you start focusing on things like that. So it's very easy to start.
I want to start by buying one of those little Oura rings that you were talking about.
Right. Well, like I said,
Yeah.
I don't get a single
You're not
full
promoting an
disclosure here.
Oura
I'm
ring.
not promoting it.
But there's several different things. So just find the best one that works for you. Start tracking your sleep. I'm very curious about that. I don't know anything about my sleep other than I want more of it.
Well, I think it opens people's eyes, right?
Yeah.
And people always say, well, yeah, I sleep really good. I drink my 2 drinks of alcohol and I fall asleep. I'm like, that's the worst thing you can do for your body.
Yeah.
Do not confuse alcohol sleepiness with quality sleep. They don't go together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I've heard that, just alcohol can just be so bad for your sleep because it's not real sleep.
I mean, alcohol, there's just no good amount of alcohol. People say, well, if you just drink 1 glass of wine a day, it's going to improve your antioxidants. That really hasn't been shown in really good studies, but, moderation is key. Yeah.
Sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about biohacking.
Right.
I've never heard this term before.
Biohacking is a huge word. It's just mainstream health span longevity. If you're into health, if you're into fitness and looking better and feeling better and wanting to live longer, you know what biohacking is. And in a very general term, Mindy, biohacking is doing anything to improve yourself to live longer and better.
Okay.
Anything. So you can choose your thing. Now, obviously, technology is taking us in places that we've never really gone before. But let's start with simple biohacking. I just talked about sleep. We just talked about nutrition, exercise. That's biohacking. That's very simple biohacking. But now we're starting to go into, hyperbaric chambers. What is a hyperbaric chamber? Or red light therapy saunas.
We hear these all the time, Dago, and I always don't know if it's just
hokey
scam trying to, get your money, trying to believe something that's just, brouhaha.
Well, the research will be coming out soon, right? Because there's a lot of people doing research on every single one of these aspects. But, there's decent research at doing a cold plunge and then followed by a hot plunge, a hot water sauna, and then jumping back into a cold plunge and back and forth. There's research that shows that it does. It improves the way that you feel and the restoration of your body. Hyperbaric chambers is filling yourself up with more oxygen than the human body typically allows you to. Doing red light therapy, we know that the wavelength of that red light is really good for healing properties and healing the cells that are dead and getting them out of your system. Have I done these? Absolutely. Of course, I'm gonna poke around and see how I feel, and I can attest to a lot of them. But those are extreme forms of biohacking. And there's conferences throughout the country in very progressive cities where you go, and the companies are out there that promote these things and educating the public about things that you can do today to help yourself live longer.
So it's not a bad thing to maybe just, try a couple of things here and there.
Yeah,
and
see how you feel.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some patients and some physicians that say, I cannot live without my red light, sauna therapy. Oh. I do this 3 times a week, and it gives me the power to push through the rest of the week, and it gives me so much energy. And that's what they choose to do. And then there's other people that'll choose to do more creative things. But that's what biohacking is. Doing anything that's going to make you live longer and better.
Okay, well, I just need to ask, of course, we film Morning Brew here in Laredo. So for those that are watching that are Laredoans, are there places here in town that offer some of these advanced biohacking?
Well, we don't have a functional medicine physician in town, but I really feel that in the near future, there are physicians that'll probably leave their post, like family practice and so forth, and become functional medicine physicians. I really think eventually it'll come. Full disclosure, I am not a longevity physician. I just have a passion for this for myself, but I do not promote a lot of these things unless you come to our wellness center. My focus of biohacking is hormone optimization, and we've talked about that, right? Optimizing people's hormones, because that's a biohack that also helps you live longer.
Yeah, and for those that want to listen to that particular Morning Brew, we did do that one, probably in one of my very first ones that we did.
We talked about menopause, I think, and the benefits of menopause.
So this was back in 2024.
And there are some wellness centers and health spas in Laredo that do have some of these extreme biohacking techniques, and I have to leave it to the public to say, hey, do your research.
Yeah.
If you want to dive into that, go ahead. But I just gave you a whole slew of things that you can start off with that you can do every single day that make you live longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I like what you said a little while ago. For the viewer who's watching us right now, all of this information has been amazing and fabulous and mind-blowing. Dago, where do we begin? I know you talked a little bit about that.
Right.
Choose one little thing and then maybe just grow a little bit from there.
Absolutely. I mean, when I came to Laredo, I probably weighed about 215 pounds. And I knew I was not in the best health that I should.
And you were military.
Right. I started, on a bed of a friend, he says, hey, I bet you can't do a HIIT class. And I said, I bet I can. And that's how I started. So I took the exercise route. Lost the weight, then I started the hormone optimization, then I started focusing on my sleep and nutrition, and it just snowballs from there.
Yeah.
And I feel probably better than I did when I felt in my 30s.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So little by little. Somebody in their 60s, 70s, is it too late? I know you said it's not, but they could be afraid of falling, of damaging a bone or something like that.
Well, that's right. I mean,
our moms, can they get started?
Absolutely. I tell those patients, go see your primary care physician, make sure that you're healthy enough that you're able to at least start something. And let's start with, weight therapy, weight exercises. There are regimens for women in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and men in that same category. And a lot of them have to do with just building muscle. I'm not talking about getting a 50-pound weight. I'm talking about a 3-pounder, a 2-pounder, or 1 pound, and starting like that. And then doing exercises that help with stability and balance. And something called offloading. So sometimes when I exercise, I'll grab a 3-pound or a 5-pound here, and I'll grab a 10-pound, and that's offloading. Offloading is because everything that we do in the world is not perfectly balanced, right? You go and you're gonna get stuff out of your groceries, you have one on this side, you have more on this side, and you're walking off balance. And that helps again with stability and prevention of falls in the future, because you know that if you fall in your 60s, 70s, or 80s and you break a hip, your mortality after breaking a hip is incredibly elevated over the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
Right. 20% of people are typically dead 1 year after having a hip fracture.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. So preventing.
Right.
Definitely. Okie doke. Well, okay, in the few minutes that we have left, Dago, what are your parting words for all of the viewers out there that are probably thinking, oh my gosh, I need to get started right now. I want to live long.
Yeah. Simple 5 things to make you better. We talked about those, right? Simple nutrition, exercise, decreasing your emotional stress. We talked about sleep, which is a really easy one. Start at 1. Pick a basic one. Start focusing on that one. Once you get better, start mastering that one. Do your research, jump to the next one. It's never too late for anybody, Mindy.
Okay. Oh, just real quick before we wrap up, Dago, you had mentioned, going back to the supplements, there are supplements that are a little bit more potent, injectable supplements. You couldn't think of the word. What do you think about those versus the ones that you find at, the grocery store in the bottle?
Well, when people talk about supplements, I always tell them, where you get a supplement is really important. Does it have the same potency from pill to pill? Is it made at a good pharmacy? Make sure that it's a legitimate source. Something as simple as your vitamin D, your vitamin B. Some people choose to take magnesium with glycine before they go to bed, and that's a restorative medication also that helps you heal and sleep better. Then you go to the injectables, such as your peptides, things that something called sermorelin, where they increase your own natural growth hormone so you can sleep better. better. The NAD shots, those are offered by wellness centers, typically off-label, not approved by the FDA. Some are, and usually you have to pay cash because insurances will pay it. But doing an injectable, like you hear the terzepatides or the semaglutides, which is the injectable, which you've had a morning brew on, you know, a lot of research is going into those, and it's starting to also increase longevity because it's preventing heart diseases, it's helping your bones from degenerative joint disease, decreasing your risk of diabetes, or you're improving your diabetes, therefore protecting your heart, your vessels, your nerves, etc.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think I just heard something about that on the news recently.
Yeah, you can have a whole other podcast just on those medications.
Absolutely. Okay, Dago, you are definitely coming back. There's at least a good 5 subjects that we need to talk more about in depth. So I can't thank you so much,
Oh, you're
Dago,
welcome,
for just shedding all this light and information and science-backed information with us. We really appreciate you being here with us.
Of course.
And please come back. Yes,
Will do.
absolutely. We need to make sure that we live long lives.
And healthy lives.
And healthy lives, that's right. And with that, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Morning Brew. What a fascinating conversation that was with Dr. Dagoberto Gonzalez. We certainly appreciate him enlightening us. But make sure you tune in next week for another episode of Morning Brew. Until then, enjoy the brew.